Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Scott Luton here with you on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's show. We have an outstanding show here today, folks. We're diving into research based on the voices of hundreds of supply chain practitioners, supply chain leaders, and a whole bunch more. Now, we've got two business leaders whose organizations partnered on the 2024 Supply Chain Trends and Attitudes Report. We're going to be diving into all the data, or at least a big chunk of the data here today, to share with you key takeaways that we hope will inform, enlighten, and educate you on the global supply chain landscape, especially when it comes to critical factors shaping the current and the future of supply chain management. Now, beyond our live discussion here today, we're going to share with you how you can get your own copy of the research so you can make your own conclusions. And hopefully you let us know what your findings are. So stay tuned for a great show. Now, two quick things before we get going here. We got a bunch of folks chiming in, including my dear friend Charles Walker from the Atlanta area, Alan Johns, Enio from Boston, Bud is back from Webster, Massachusetts, and so many others. Folks, we want to hear from you throughout today's very live conversation. Share your comments and let us know your take on some of these critical topics we're going to be working through. And of course, secondly, if you enjoyed today's show, be sure to find it and share it with a friend or your network. Sharing is caring, like we like to remind folks out there. All right, one quick thing before I welcome in our guests. Hey, Jeff Leroy, an OG member of our Supply Chain Now ecosystem from probably down there in Savannah, Georgia, beautiful Savannah, Georgia. Great to see you here today, Jeff. Okay, everybody, I want to welcome in an outstanding panel that's going to guide us through this, some key findings from, I think, an intriguing research project. We're going to welcome in Dr. Dinesh Dave, Director and Professor of Supply Chain Management in the Walker College of Business at Appalachian State University, and Evan Junker, Chief Growth Officer with SPARQ360. Hey, Dr. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing? And hope everyone doing well.
Everybody's doing great. We've got a great conversation teed up. I hope Boone, North Carolina is pretty this time of year. And Evan, how you doing today?
Doing good, Scott. How are you?
Wonderful. Great to see you both. Now, I want to start. We got a lot to get into here today. A ton of key takeaways from you both. And we're going to offer up how folks can get the whole enchilada rather, after today's live session. But we've done our homework on you both. And I want to start with a fun warm-up question. Folks, here's some important advice. Do not mess with Dr. Dave, because a couple of years ago, he earned his black belt in Taekwondo. Okay, so don't mess with him. But also, Dr. Dave, you just completed building a house in beautiful Wilmington, North Carolina. So I want to ask you here on the front end, which of those two big accomplishments, which one's tougher?
I think getting Taekwondo and accomplishment as black belt was really challenging because it requires dedication, hard work, perseverance. But I'm glad that I got it a few years ago, and I'm very delighted to have that.
It was probably, I'm assuming, a little bit less expensive than building a new house. I don't know, it's close, but either way, congratulations on both, and we look forward to pictures of your next competition or of the house.
Thank you.
All right, so Evan, equally as intriguing, we got to know you a little better in the pre-show, and we learned that you recently earned your paragliding license, and you were talking about how cool it is. I can just imagine it, to paraglide over the Alps. Tell us more, Evan.
Yeah. Well, I went full through, I went hardcore into my midlife crisis a couple of years ago. Sold everything I owned, moved to Germany, got my mid-career MBA, did all the things, right? And then after I got my MBA, I got in the car and I drove to Austria. And the next day I started learning how to paraglide. And I can't recommend it enough. Just go up a couple kilometers, jump off a mountain and fly.
Hey, I can't wait to see some of your video that you take. So, hey, coming to a YouTube channel perhaps near you. But regardless, Evan and Dr. Dave, welcome to you both. I appreciate you being here. Before we dive in, I want to welcome in Professor Bill Stankiewicz, dear friend, also from Savannah, Georgia. Great to see you here today. And, hey, Kirthana, who says, I'm proud to say he was my very first Taekwondo teacher. So Dr. Dave, you've got students with you. How cool is that?
Excellent.
You brought a fan club.
Oh, fan club. That's right. I'm the newest member. Okay, so let's start with giving some folks some really valuable context, right? We learned a little personal note about you, but now we'll learn a little more about you both and your organization. So Dr. Dave, if you would tell us briefly about your background, as well as the Supply Chain Management BSBA program at Appalachian State University.
Great. Yeah, I am director of the Supply Chain Management program and professor in the Department of Marketing and Supply Chain Management in Walker College of Business in Appalachian State University, North Carolina. We have a very reputable supply chain management program. We started a few years ago, about a decade ago, and we have close to 300 students who are pursuing major or minor in supply chain management. It's one of the true Bachelor of Science in Business Administration program in supply chain management. We have an outstanding supply chain club, as well as very active advisory board who guide our program.
Outstanding. And I'm sure you draw on your experience and your background, and that along with the rest of the staff and faculty really has helped shape and grow and mold the growing supply chain program at App State, huh?
Yes, absolutely. And we have placing our students, graduates in a very successful career, and many of the alumni coming back and recruit our students.
Outstanding, man. Hey, getting good jobs. That's one of the great outcomes, right?
Absolutely.
Now, Evan, switching gears a bit. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and Morgan and many other team members there at SPARQ360. If you would, tell us what the team does.
Well, we've been called the get your hands dirty kind of consultants. And I think we take offense to that, not because of the get your hands dirty part, but because of the consultant part. Most people think of consultants as people that kind of tell you what to do, give you a report and shove you off on your way.
Right.
And really SPARQ360 is a company based out of former supply chain directors, account managers, procurement specialists, warehouse operators, logistics engineers, and sustainability specialists. They're practitioners more than consultants. And so, we're a company that comes in and helps companies, find the underlying challenges, develop a roadmap to success, and then help them implement it, whether it's a supply chain challenge or a sustainability challenge.
Hey, I love that model. The implementation and execution piece is so critical, as we all know, to getting outcomes. And a lot of what you just shared there was a lot of what I took away from our episode that maybe Catherine and Amanda can drop in the comments from a few weeks back. So good stuff there, and keep moving those mountains. And by the way, big thanks to Amanda and Catherine behind the scenes to help make production happen for sure. Okay, so now that we really, in a nutshell, got to know a little bit better Dr. Dave and Evan here today, we're going to dive into our main focus. And folks, you're going to get, I love research. I love data-driven research, especially when it's the voice of supply chain practitioners and leaders that drive it. So y'all going to really get a kick out of the 2024 Supply Chain Trends and Attitudes report that SPARQ360 and App State teamed up to deliver. Now, as I mentioned, the survey focused on supply chain management professionals and their perspective on a variety of topics to include technology spending priorities, sustainability progress, and my favorite topic, perhaps, collaboration across the ecosystem, all that and a whole bunch more. So I want to start with some background and some more context, Evan. If you would tell us the origin story of this report.
Yeah, well, like I was saying, we're not your typical consultants. So our guys are out there in the field supporting clients, and they kept coming back, giving us some insights as to what's going on, what new technologies people are looking at. We're always looking for new things that will help support our clients in operating more efficiently and meeting their sustainability obligations. And, we kept getting this anecdotal stuff. And, at one point we all sat down and we're like, there's got to be a way where we can actually systemically find out what supply chain managers are thinking. And there's some great, reports out there already. Don't get me wrong. There's some really insightful things, the, state of logistics, the state of sustainability and logistics, among many others that are put out every year, but none that really get to the heart of what are supply chain managers thinking both now and in 3 to 5 years. And so that's how it started. And after a couple of phone calls, we found a great partner in App State, and the rest is history.
It is. And history y'all can check out, living and breathing history. And I should add, and Evan, correct me if I'm wrong, almost 300 supply chain managers. We're talking about a nice, healthy, really healthy truckload of inputs that drove these findings.
Absolutely.
Okay. So before we move forward, I got to say hello to my dear friend TV. Old Tom Valentine's with us. Hello to you. Let us know where you're tuned in from here today, TV, as you stay on the road. And Catherine was kind enough to drop that podcast I mentioned earlier, where I featured a couple of the leaders with SPARQ360. So y'all check that out. Okay. Now the good stuff. All this is good stuff. But here we're getting to some of the findings, which I really enjoy. So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Dabe. What are supply chain managers prioritizing when it comes to investments, especially in technologies in the coming 3 to 5 years?
Absolutely, yes. We have received about 293 completed survey of the supply chain managers, and we looked at their internal consistency. So the data and the results are pretty accurate, and we can infer for the population very easily. So now, when we found some interesting issues, supply chain managers indicated that their company will be spending fairly significant amount of resources on supply chain visibility platform, followed by predictive analytics and demand planning and artificial intelligence. So that was pretty interesting that we found. They also indicated that their companies will be spending moderately on renewable energy, green technologies, and robotics and automation. So these are very interesting issues.
Agreed. Evan, when you hear about what the data shows, where people are organizations, supply chain teams are investing big dollars, surprises, insights, reaction, what'd you see there?
Yeah, I think it affirms some of the things we've been hearing from the field, but I was surprised that every single technology, both in the supply chain side and the sustainability side, every technology we asked about pretty much across the board, there was a higher should be than will be. Now, let me explain that. In the survey, we asked two questions. How much money do you think companies in your industry will be spending in the next 3 to 5 years? And then we asked them how much they thought they should be spending in the next 3 to 5 years. And pretty much across the board, the should be was higher than the will be's. Okay, do you follow me there? So it showed this consistent upward pressure of people thinking they should be spending more than they actually plan on spending. And I think another piece was when we look at the various technologies. First, I will the question I get every week on this, AI, right? Everybody's talking about AI. That the gap wasn't as significant there because people were already spending at the top levels for AI. They're planning on spending at the very high levels in AI for the next 3 to 5 years. So there's just not room for upward pressure. But all the others we saw fairly good upward pressure on. There's more on the sustainability technologies. And that's the thing that I think caught me a little bit off guard, because we hear a lot about that stuff coming out. But you see more pressure on things like circular economy solutions, remote work, and teleoperation and decarbonization. There's a lower investment level relative to a much higher we should be spending on this, and that was something that I think was surprising from the survey.
I'm with you, and we're going to dive into that gap and maybe what's causing it. Especially to your point. And this comes as no surprise to anyone, from shareholders to suppliers to customers to team members, investors, you name it. Every survey out there, they want more and more sustainability and more real tangible outcomes that they can see and be measured. That's what's driving a lot of the brand dedication, for lack of a better phrase. So, with those clearly larger gaps in sustainability investments compared to supply chain investments, Dr. Dabe, what's helping to create these gaps, you think?
I believe that there are some financial benefits as well as the reputation of the organization, branding issue. So these are the important issue, plus the young customers are demanding or asking for a high level of sustainability and leadership in that area. So that shows pretty interesting to many organizations, and we see that the data suggested that, like Evan said, decarbonization, renewable energy, green technology, circular economy solution,
Yep.
and remote and work, and as well as teleoperation, that managers are recommending that we should be spending more.
Yep. So Evan, again, a lot of what Dr. Davi was talking about there is what's driving these gaps in this surprising gap between sustainability investments and those spending and maybe across the board supply chain spending. What else did you find is driving this gap that kind of surprised us here?
Well, we know a couple things. We know from the survey that only about 40% or so, or 39.6%, I think, of companies are measuring greenhouse gases,
right,
and 50% aren't. And also surprising, 10% aren't sure. They don't know if they are or not. And particularly in smaller companies, and I'm talking, companies that are below 50 million in annual revenue.
Right.
Only 30%, like even less, are measuring. So we have this gap of people that aren't measuring. And so when you're talking about doing investments in the technology and you're not capturing some measurements to report on that, there's a question of familiarity. There's a question of benefit. There's a question of, should we be doing this? Do we need to do this? There's a lot of questions on that piece. What I'm seeing, and I think we're hearing from our customers in particular, is that it's coming. Whether you want it or not, it's coming. And I know we were all, kind of waiting for a long time on the SEC regulations to come into play. And when they came out, a lot of people breathed a sigh of relief because Scope 3 emissions weren't included. And then it went into litigation after that. But at the end of the day, we have a large market-driven economy. And if you have global clients that have to report in Europe because of CSRD regulations, or China and Asia,
right,
or in Australia, which now have regulations very much similar to the European regulations, they're going to come to you because they have to report on their global supply chain emissions.
Right.
They have to report on things. So we're starting to see more pressure build up, but the gap is definitely there. And with only 40% measuring their emissions, there's definitely going to be a closure at some point.
Yes. Oh man, that your last response should be its own episode in so many ways. And the study, the report dives into this familiarity across a variety of different technologies and what the disconnects that can create. And also, I want to make one more comment before we move on. Is you're talking about basically, if we don't measure it, it's real difficult to manage it. And if we can't manage it, it's really difficult to build a business case of why we invest in the technology to address it. So, but I tend to agree with you. It is coming. I'm very optimistic, practically optimistic in that regard, especially as it relates to sustainability. Hey, before I move forward with some of the key drivers when it comes to sustainability in the U.S., Dr. Davi, we've covered a lot of ground since your last response. Any quick comment on what we were just talking about?
Absolutely. That's something very interesting when you talk about the familiarity. It is encouraging that about 46% of the supply chain managers responded they are very familiar with the technology. So when we cluster the data using statistical methodology, we found that 46 to 54%, they are moderately familiar, but that one group, the 46%, is very, very familiar. And we'll talk more about that, but this is very encouraging. And hopefully when we have a younger workforce enter in the market, then they are more familiar with technology, and then we'll have more interesting data.
Dr. Davi, I'm so glad you made that point. I am known, at least probably on my team, for naive optimism. And I love now that we can share and celebrate data-driven optimism. So I love that. And folks, stay tuned. We're going to give you to make sure we point out the link so you can download this report, dog ear it, spill coffee on it, or view it from your computer and give us your key takeaways and findings. Evan, sustainability. Let's talk about some of the key drivers when it comes to sustainability in the U.S. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and this is one of the things that surprised me a little bit. There's basically 6 common drivers that we accept as the main drivers of sustainability. We have government regulation compliance, we have improved brand reputation, environmental action, improved financial evaluation, customer demand, and recruitment of talent. And those are generally accepted as the 6 core drivers. Now, when we were designing this study, we wanted to see, okay, which ones are more important than others? And fun backstory, I remember speaking with Dr. Dave and his team and saying, we need to be able to let them rank each one, 0 to 6, because they need to be able to say that multiple ones are at a 0 level, right? And surprisingly, I'm glad that we let them rank them independently, because every single driver came out as either very important or extremely important as the number 1 and 2 responses. And that surprised me. I didn't expect things like government regulation to be ranking 1 and 2 as the top one, but sure enough, 75% of respondents ranked government regulation compliance as either extremely or very important. And it's pretty much across the board that you had about 2/3 for the most part. I think environmental action was a little under 2/3, but everything else was over 2/3 or around 2/3 as extremely or very important. All 6 drivers.
Man, okay. So folks, let me recap that really quick. My font isn't as big as I want it to. If I missed something, Evan, please correct me. Let's see. We got those 6 key drivers, right? That
Yep.
Evan just walked us through: government regulations, improved reputation or brand, environmental action, improved evaluation when it comes to financials, right? Customer demand, and recruitment of talent. Those were the 6. I got those right, Evan?
That's it. Yep.
So to all the folks out there that are watching this live, let us know what out of those 6, what do you find most intriguing? Which one of those do you find really surprising? Or which one of those do you feel is most important to your culture or your buying habits or your supply chain experience? So Dr. Dave, before we move on to collaboration, which is one of my favorite topics to talk about, any quick comment there on those key drivers when it comes to sustainability?
Yes, it was very interesting that when we cluster the data, one is very familiar in technology, which 46% of the respondents and 54 are moderately familiar. And those who are very familiar, that group ranked very high on meeting with customer demand.
Okay.
And that's very important, one of the important drivers, followed by compliance with government regulation and improved brand reputation. So these are very interesting findings, and I'm very thrilled about it.
Now, Scott, if I can jump in here, there's one other piece that I think is playing out. We see, I think, customer demand, and this I did expect. I think we all did. Customer demand in the United States is the biggest driver by far. It's 81% as very or extremely important.
Yep.
But in the U.S., the SEC piece is in litigation. It doesn't have Scope 3 attached. Right now we have, I think, New York, Illinois, California have some regulations for companies over $1 billion in revenue or thereabouts. But all in all, I think we could agree that the U.S. is fairly unregulated in terms of ESG reporting requirements relative to the global stage.
That's right.
But that customer demand piece is, I think, clearly showing up in the government regulation piece. And we get calls every week from somebody who's going to lose a major well-known brand as a customer because that well-known brand is telling them, are you EcoVadis certified? What's your sustainability program? Are you measuring greenhouse gases, and what's your plan by 2030? We're getting calls from people that are going to lose their biggest customer, which is usually a global customer, because those global customers have government regulations. So, whether we have our own, US-based regulatory framework or not, it's clearly having an impact, and we're starting to feel it.
Yes. 2 quick, probably expected, no surprise observations. Number one, that regulation's coming to the U.S. It's just a matter of what it looks like, and just to extent, and then it'll continue to evolve for sure. And then number 2, when you're talking to customers, well, any customer of any size, you don't want to lose any customers, but clearly the customer demand is driving more and more real tangible action and outcomes with as it relates to sustainability. And I think that's good news. And I look forward to learning a lot more as this survey gets out across the global industry and we get more feedback. So moving right along, I want to talk about what is almost inseparable from any supply chain organization, supply chain team, supply chain ecosystem, supply chain discussion, and that is collaboration, right? That's how global supply chains execute. So, Dr. Dave, what level of collaboration, examples, you name it, did you see here as it relates to what companies and supply chain managers are engaging in?
Sure. Very interestingly, about 48% or half of the supply chain managers reported that their company often or always collaborate with suppliers on supply chain optimization initiatives. And when we broke it down by size of the company, about 450 million to 650 million, they collaborate more often, followed by 250 million to 450 million organization. And next one was largest company, which is 650 million. So that collaboration in terms of supply chain optimization, we found very interesting. When we look at the collaboration on supply chain sustainability initiative, we found out that about the same percentage, about half of the supply chain managers, or 47% of the managers, reported that their company often or always collaborate with suppliers on supply chain sustainability initiatives. And when we saw that company which are ranking high would be 250 million to 450 million, followed by 450 million to 650 million dollars company. So this is very interesting.
Yeah, it is. And Evan, I'll get you a quick comment before I move forward. I've worked when I was in industry, I'll call it, especially working in the manufacturing industry. Most of the companies I worked for, two in particular, were family run, certainly in the smaller percentiles of what Dr. Dave just kind of walked us through. And, obviously, as we all know, resources can be really constrained versus some of the big enterprises that have entire teams dedicated to finding efficiencies across the ecosystem. But just a quick tip for everybody, folks, it's really easy, even in smaller teams, to create a lunch and learn event or a Zoom call where you bring in your suppliers on a regular basis and you have a conversation and you really you eliminate those blind spots and you can find opportunities and build relationships. And you know what? It sounds so obvious, but I've been there and done it. And I'll tell you, you create those communication cadences coming, which are really easier to do. You'd be surprised of what you can find that benefits the whole ecosystem in many ways. Evan, really quick, we were talking just a second ago with Dr. Dave on collaboration, company size, what we're seeing, what the research found. Your quick comment before I want to switch over to what surprised you both.
Yeah, one of the things that surprised me is and I actually appreciated a lot of the always and often responses. I was surprised that those covered about half of the respondents. But it's something that I think we're starting to see more of. And I'm interested in what future data we might have that shows where this trend is going. We are starting to see more of it, and particularly as we identify opportunities to integrate both sustainability and supply chain optimization. We're going to see more companies taking part of that. Let me give you an example, Scott.
Sure. Yeah.
So one of the things that we do with a lot of our customers is engineering studies. And, even, small, mid-sized 3PLs can take advantage of this. I don't care how small. This is something that benefits everybody, right?
Yep.
So if you can, find a way that if you can, eliminate those empty miles coming back, those empty backhaul miles, you're saving money and you're reducing your overall carbon footprint. And it doesn't, it's not rocket science. It takes somebody having focused effort.
Right.
And a lot of time that's why people bring us in, is because we can, help you work with your customers and line that up and, get things on the right day they need to be on to make sure that we're saving labor costs, saving truck miles, saving it all. But that's what it takes. It takes things like that, just thinking a little bit outside the box and saying, hey, if we do this, we can, save money and reduce our carbon footprint. And guess what? If we measure our greenhouse gas emissions, we can actually report on that. And all of a sudden we have a sustainability program that we can then show our customers and then help us get more customers and keep the ones we have.
Man, you paint almost as pretty of a picture as you flying above the Alps there, Evan. And I'll just add out there, if you don't get help from Evan and SPARQ360, get help somewhere, because there's tremendous opportunities no matter your company size. And I get the constraints and all the work that goes into getting product out the door every day, and some days are tougher than others to lead improvement opportunities. But gosh, find a way, and there's great partners, experts out there that can help you make it happen. So let's shift over. Evan kind of started the surprise conversation. That's kind of one of my next questions for you both. So Dr. Dave, as you survey all of this data, and I can't remember how many truckloads of data that these almost 300 supply chain leaders gave y'all, tons, but what's one thing that surprised you?
Well, there are a few very interesting aspects which surprised me. One is those companies who measure the greenhouse gas, 56% had very comprehensive supply chain management program.
Okay.
So that's very encouraging. About 30% of respondents company had customer require sustainability improvement as a part of their supply chain procurement. And also company who measure the greenhouse gas, more than half, like 56%, had customers sometimes require sustainability improvement as part of their supply chain procurement process. And that I found very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Customers certainly, and their demands or expectations are driving action and results. And we'll continue to see that, is my crystal ball prediction in the years ahead. Quick, before I come back to you, Evan. Hey, Bakil, great questions. And I bet my hunch is, Evan, welcome. Great to have you here. I bet Evan and Dr. Dave would welcome post live stream conversations with all the folks that have questions, especially after you get a copy of the survey. And hey, Marcelo, hey, I'm always a few minutes behind. Welcome, man. I'm glad you're here, tuned in from the ATL, where we're getting a nice little reprieve from the heat. We're not even hitting 90 degrees today, and that is a good thing. All right, so Evan, you're talking earlier on a couple elements that surprised you. I think one of the things that we talked about pre-show was the length of payback period.
Yeah.
Right. And we don't want that to be 17 years. It needs to be a little shorter than that. Your thoughts?
Yeah. And this is one of the things, because I thought people would see shorter payback periods. And clearly we have two pieces. We have, your basic sustainability things, and then you have a lot of capital expenditure things, right?
Right.
And I'll admit your payback period, if you're buying a fleet of electric trucks, is going to be a little different than some of the more efficient ones. So I understand that there can be long payback periods, but I was surprised that only, I think, less than 15% of people believe that they could achieve payback periods on sustainability initiatives in under a year. And I'm surprised, because in general, most of the things that we're looking at when people call us, our first couple of things that we work with people on are things that have payback periods in well under a year. We target 120 days. Sometimes it's 180.
Nice.
But there are usually sustainability improvements that you can do that you can capture your payback, and then everything past that is gravy, right? Then you can reinvest and do some of your bigger pieces.
Exactly.
And so, that was one of the things that really surprised me is the length of payback. And then we had, a certain percentage believed they would never recoup their costs. And I think some of this has to do, as Dr. Dave was saying earlier, some of this has to do with familiarity. Some of this has to do with some knowledge of some of these technologies and the efficiencies they have in terms of cost savings as well. So there's some room to grow there in terms of education and awareness and familiarity. and there's probably some overlooked opportunities that people can take advantage of.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite parts of the survey, and I'm gonna take a third pass this afternoon and dive in deeper. But I loved the focus on familiarity, because in general, supply chain and elsewhere, that lack of awareness can really create some problems, and certainly some missed opportunities at a minimum. So I love how y'all focused in on the data-driven component of lack of familiarity across different parts of sustainability, supply chain technology, and more. Okay, folks, we've been promising that we are going to share with y'all how you can get your own copy of this survey. So, Evan, you and Dr. Dave and your respective organizations that have invested in this great research are making it available, a copy of the survey and its results for the people out there. How can folks connect? And I think I've got a simple graphic here so folks can kind of see what to expect as you download your own copy. Where can folks go to download their own copy of the 2024 Supply Chain Trends and Attitudes Report?
Yeah, if you go to SPARQ360, and I'm going to be very clear here now, you have this graphic up, and you'll notice SPARQ is spelled with a Q. So yeah, you have to remember that. But if you go to SPARQ360 with a Q.com/trends and attitudes, you can download a copy. And I think for the rest of the month, we're going to leave a link on the homepage as well. But go to SPARQ360.com and you can get the summary report. Now, before Dr. Dave jumps in and kills me, this is a summary of the data. Okay, it's about 18 pages long. It has a summary of the data along with some implications of it, and we lead off right off the bat with 6 recommendations, right? And then we kind of give you an analysis and a treatment. Dr. Dave and his team are working on what I'm sure is a much more detailed, much more statistical analysis of it that will be hopefully ready soon before CSCMP Edge. Is that right?
Oh, right. Yes. We'll be working, Dr. Jim Starter and Mr. Doug Morelli and myself will be working on preparing the report, because these two individuals, Dr. Starter and Mr. Morelli, and their expertise will help significantly. It's absolutely brilliant people. And so we'll be going deep dive into that. We have 110 pages long survey right now, that's the data and everything, but we are going to compile and do a lot more further statistical analysis and see how can we implement certain data. For example, very interestingly, when a company measures the greenhouse gas, and they have 56% of them respondents have comprehensive sustainability program. I mean, these are very fascinating studies. So we can slice and dice the data, and provide great information to our readers and to the industry.
Hey.
So for those of you that are on the academic side of things, hold your breath. It's coming. For those of you that are practitioners in the field and you want the practical components that you can kind of lift out, and you don't have that much time, you go to the SPARQ360 website. You can download the summary version now.
Love it. And Dr. Dave, I'll have my standard deviation measurement tools ready to go to help y'all.
Yeah, exactly.
No, just kidding. You don't want my help with the highfalutin world-class statistical analysis, but I am looking forward to seeing the whole thing hit. But Evan, great call out. And by the way, folks, we're here to make it easier for you, right? We got the direct link, right? You can certainly go to SPARQ with a Q360.com and easily find it. I know I did, but we've got the direct link. You're one click away. It's right there in the comments. And if you listen to the replay, it'll be in the show notes. We try to make it as easy as possible. Now, I know y'all are starting to, I got a couple more questions before y'all get out of here. You're starting to prompt some great dialogues across our global audience. I can tell that by some of these great questions we're getting that we're not going to be able to get to here today. But TV, asking about SaaS and PaaS. You have got Charles Walker asking about some of the other investment gaps. Charles and TV are home run hitters there. You got Mira talking about the total cost of the opportunity, a kind of a different TCO. I love that, Mira. Great call out. Mira believes the penalties, being an example, is at the corporate level versus at the initiative level. That's a great call out, Mira. All right. So y'all keep it coming. We're going to make sure we can get y'all connected to our panel to keep the dialogue
And I got to
going.
say, I would love to geek out on here for the rest of the day, but we only have limited time. But I will say, like, anybody wants to talk about these things or have a conversation, some of it's in the summary, some of it will be in the further research that's being published by the App State team. But we've been combing over this data for a couple months now, and so I would welcome a longer conversation about any of those things.
So Evan, one last wrap, because you said we got the full version. The key highlights are available now. We dropped the link there, SPARQ360.com. The full version, Dr. Dave and his esteemed team are working on. I think you mentioned it might be ready by the time CSCMP Edge rolls around. That's wonderful. What else? What's next? Where do we go from? Where does this first year report that I know I've enjoyed so much, where do we go from here?
Well, Dr. Dave and his team haven't blocked my phone calls or emails yet, so we might be able to carry this forward and see if we can carry it year to year or biannually or something of that nature. Whether we do this again in the U.S. next, or maybe we look at a European counterpart so we can measure geographic differences and time differences. We're still discussing what that might look like, but we're just enjoying having this first one in the door and the insights that it leads, and we'll tackle that after we get the next version published.
Well said. Well said. Look at me, always asking, what have you done for us lately? And this is lately. This is fresh. Now, kidding aside, well done, really. Again, we see all kinds of these types of research reports and initiatives, and I really appreciate y'all's approach and the wealth of supply chain practitioner community that went into the outputs. That's an important distinction. Okay. One last question for you, Dr. Dave. We like to refer to the current sets of students going through programs across universities, especially in supply chain, as the now generation, because it's not the next generation. They're already making an impact, I believe, in industry. These supply chain students matriculating through programs such as yours at App State. So you got your finger on the pulse more than many of the folks out there. What should hiring managers know about these members of the now generation, their expectations when it comes to a job?
Absolutely. Great question, Scott. We have Bachelor of Science in Supply Chain Management, BSBA, undergrad degree program. We have supply chain as one of the popular concentrations in MBA program, as well as Master of Science in Applied Data Analytics. So generally, the students have some expectation. Of course, the comparative compensation is given, but opportunity to advance and build their career in organization with hard work. That's what they are looking at, the long-term possibility.
Yep.
They are also looking at work-life balance and some flexibility in schedule. For example, hybrid, some combination of remote work as well as in-person work, etc. Many of our students have shown the interest that they would like to have some opportunity in global area, like work with the suppliers or the customers, etc. in other part of the world. Almost all students are looking at some kind of mentoring opportunity, that if they can get some mentorship from the senior level administrators in the organization, they can learn a lot. And that's coming up pretty interestingly. So these are the traits that we think would be important.
Love that, Dr. Dave. And I especially love your first couple of responses when it comes to really fulfilling work, right? And that work-life balance. And I tell you, very powerful components of a culture that really can focus on hiring the best talent out there, and not just hiring them, but developing them in a fulfilling way. And of course, retaining talent, which is a big part of the holistic cycle there. Okay. A lot of good stuff. And folks, let's do this. We're approaching the home stretch. I want to make sure all of our audience members out there know how to connect with you both and your respective organizations. Evan Yunker with SPARQ360, a group on the move. Appreciate what you've shared here today, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. How can folks connect with you, Evan?
Well, I got 2 inboxes open pretty much all day, my Outlook and my LinkedIn. So either one is fine by me. If you want to hit me up on email, it's evan.junker, spelled Junker, evan.junker at SPARQ360.com, Spark with a Q. If you can remember that email address, you're doing good. And you can just search for Evan Junker on LinkedIn, and you'll find me pretty easily there.
Outstanding. It's just that easy, folks. And we're dropping at least Evan's LinkedIn URL
Look
right
at that.
there.
You don't even have to remember how to spell my name. You can just click the link. There you go.
We try hard. That's right. All right. So Dr. Dave, really appreciate what you and your group, your staff, your faculty do, not just to engage these incredible, bright young minds that are making impact already, but your work in pieces that really help the current practitionership or supply chain community out there. How can folks connect with you and your supply chain program at App State?
Very, very simple. My last name Dave, spelled like D-A-V-E. So Dave, D-S, D-A-V-E-D-S at appstate.edu.
Okay.
Or they can go on Appalachian State University, put my name or supply chain, then it will show up. LinkedIn is also, I have put my information here in chat, but email is the easiest way to get in touch with me because I can check it many, many times, even if I'm visiting other countries, etc. So that will be easy. Dave, DS at appstate.edu.
Okay, so I will try to drop that as well. Dave, D-A-V-E-D-S at appstate.edu. Is that right, Dr.
Yes.
Dave?
APP State, App State.
That is right. Okay, we'll drop that as well. And we already are. How about that? Man, Catherine and Amanda, the team, don't miss a beat back there. Also, we also included a link so you can directly connect with the App State Department of Marketing and Supply Chain Management. So you can check out that link as well as we have got the link. I want to reiterate one more time. Folks, you got to download your own copy of the 2024 Supply Chain Trends and Attitudes Report. And when you do, you got to make a commitment to give us your key takeaways. You know, what'd you agree with here? What'd you disagree with here? What'd you see in the data and the findings? Let us know. And if it's really if it's an Academy Award response, we may publish it in an upcoming newsletter because we got the smartest audience in all of global supply chain, Evan and Dr. Dave. Okay, what an outstanding conversation, very efficient conversation. That was my impression of y'all both through the pre-show discussion. I want to thank Dr. Dave, the black belt in Taekwondo, the new homeowner in Wilmington, North Carolina. And I'll tell you, one heck of a supply chain guru, and I really appreciate your work here and elsewhere. Dr. Dave, Director and Professor of Supply Chain Management in the Walker College of Business at Appalachian State University. Thank you, Dr. Dave, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
And of course, it takes groups like SPARQ360 and Evan Junker, who serves as Chief Growth Officer there, to invest in. This is no small feat, right? This took a big investment of time and resources. And I really appreciate what y'all do there, Evan, and out in the industry. Really enjoyed getting to know you and your organization better. Thanks for being here, Evan.
Thanks, Scott. It's a pleasure as always.
And we're going to talk about those Atlanta Braves in our next conversation, okay? It's going to be tough to get us into playoffs. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, folks. And most importantly, beyond Dr. Dave and Evan here today, thanks for being here. Thanks for all the great comments. I know we couldn't get to all of them. Let's keep the dialogue going. Reach out to Dr. Dave and Evan. Get that cup of coffee session, you name it, a Zoom call, or maybe in person at an upcoming conference like at CSCMP Edge, where there's going to be a lot more about this study there.
And Scott, if I can jump in here, I know you're closing up, but let me say one thing. We will have people both from App State and from SPARQ360. We will all be at Edge, and we'll have the copies of the report available, and we'd love to talk to you about it there if you're going to be at Edge.
I love it.
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Doug Morelli is going to be there attending the Edge Conference in Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals, CSCMP, in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, man, y'all are on the move. I'm convinced.
We're on tour, man. We're on tour.
Hey, let's do it. Let's do it. I want to open. I want to open for y'all, right? I'll open for the Rolling Stones. But hey, folks, connect with them there at CSCP Edge. What a great conference. But most importantly, thanks for being here. Thanks for all the great comments and the feedback. Check out the survey. Let us know what your key findings are, your perspective is. Connect with our panel. But whatever you do, Scott, on behalf of our entire team here at Supply Chain Now, Scott Luton challenging you, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. And we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.